Hold on, Brent.
The casting is live. We are live, y'all. We are live.
We're live. We're live.
We
Welcome,
are.
everyone. Welcome, everyone. My name is Shanae Herbert. I work for the Healing Justice Program of St. Paul and Minneapolis, or the Twin Cities. And this is my amazing team, and so I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves. As you know, our home of Minneapolis is been brought center stage to national attention and even international attention for what is happening with the Derek Chauvin trial. He is the ex MPD officer that is accused of killing George Floyd. And so we are here today to talk about things that are happening in our community and how you can get engaged. And so I just want to give my team an opportunity to introduce themselves, their name, their title, and then just how are you doing given what is happening in our city?
So I could go first. What's up, y'all? Happy to be here. My name is Brent Crockett. I am the program associate for this amazing team, all-star team that we have right here. And how I'm doing during this time, I think it's fluid right now. It's kind of fluctuating. It's a lot of high tense moments, but then it's also a lot of black joy I'm finding within this space. So I'm happy to be here and to share some knowledge on what's going on here too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Edith Kamau. I am the Healing Justice Carey Fellow for YUIR this year. And how I'm doing, honestly, it's day by day, right? There are days where, like Brent said, it's really heavy. And then there are other days where I've tapped out of what's happening with the trial and just been present in my moments with the people that I love and my community and my coworkers, and been finding moments of relief. So I'm glad to be here and excited to talk about what we're going to discuss today.
Awesome. So I guess I didn't answer the question, how am I doing? Yeah, I teeter between like really days of like feeling that collective grief that we all feel. I'm constantly seeing the videos of what is happening in the trial, right? And just the pain of and suffering that Brother George had to endure, right, in his last minutes of his life. And then also just a deep understanding for the system, right? And we always talk about systems. And so I just I think about like how we've relied on a system that is super problematic and inhumane, right? Even down to the trial. And so we're going to get into all of those things, but I just wanted to put that out there. I know that we're all feeling a sense of grief. So if you want to kick us off with the first question.
Yeah, for sure. So like we've alluded to, and y'all have probably seen in the media, since the killing of George Floyd, a makeshift memorial was erected on 38th and Chicago Avenue in front of the convenience store where George was killed. And so that space has been deemed an autonomous zone, and it still stands as that to this day. And so I just want both of y'all to kind of just talk about the significance of this of space, that space particularly, and then the city's officials slash Minneapolis police department's perspectives as they speak of that space, and mostly talking about the lawlessness and the elevated levels of crime that are present there.
I can answer. Really, that space, when it initially happened, I actually, a lot of people like myself ascended on that area, probably the day after George Floyd was murdered. And really that space holds a deep significance for the community and the members that live in that area. And there's two ideologies that are existing at once, right? We want to keep this space as a symbol of justice until we receive justice through the legal system. And so you have people, community members that have banded together to hold down the space, right? And then there are community members that have been in support of that idea, right? Because they feel like, the streets are a symbol, right? of power, right? And then there's other people in the community, the surrounding communities, that are saying, you know what, as a result of this space being shut down in an autonomous zone, we're experiencing an increase in crime, right? And I think, what's interesting and what's a note that should be noted here is that in cities across America, crime has spiked, right? And so it's not just that area, right? And so you have to think about the entire context and not just as a result of the death of George Floyd. And so I think that's what the media harps on, right? The increase in crime without painting the entire picture. But at the heart, right, we know that there are people that are really like honing in that there's a lack of police response, right? Because they're dealing with other things in our city, and so there's less response, right, to minor crimes. But for the most part, the people that are there holding down the space just want a space to commune. They want a space to mourn. They want a space to just be as a symbol of justice.
Thank you. Thank you. Bryn,
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to echo off that, I think also to be cognizant, like we said, of the fact that, depending on, there's two different perspectives on which people want to do with that space. So with that understanding, the media, you can kind of understand where the media is agreeing in perspective or disagreeing in perspective based on what they're giving you as far as like the knowledge or the news or anything like that. So like even when Shanae brought up the point about crime being raised in multiple cities due to the pandemic, due to people being home more and being not in their space of work or in their space of school or wherever, all these systems that used to be at play full force, people have kind of like diverted away from that idea due to obviously what happened over South with George Floyd. So I think also understanding that that's happening in all parts of our city, not just in Southside Minneapolis, also in North Minneapolis, also in suburb areas, but it's based on what wants to be painted. So it's tough. And also I think another thing to note in the space is like there's that you can feel the divide because you do have people that are still using the store that was responsible for the calling of the officers to come. You know what I mean? So keeping that in mind too is like it's a thin line, but I mean, yeah, it's different.
Also, like that is the home of in Minneapolis, one of the first places where Black people were able to build businesses. And so you have a significant amount of Black businesses that are in that area that are also saying, hey, we're struggling. We are down for justice, but we need a little help, right? And so, like many other places, they're expecting our city to provide that help until we get justice. So I just wanted to add that perspective as well.
Yeah.
The next question we have is actually my question. So we are now in day 20, I think, of the trial, right? And so I just want to get you all's perspective on the trial, right? So maybe you can talk about the witnesses. Y'all, the young people are representing. I think it was the second day. You've seen a number of young people that were out there as witnesses. At one point, we had also talked about the adultification of the young people, right? And how our system put these young people on stand in a very grown-up situation. And then even maybe you can talk about the police chief and the crossing of the blue line.
I can go first. As far as just, I think the word that sticks out to me during this trial the most is poise. I feel like a lot of, from the adults that are witnesses to the young people, they have held their poise. And there has been, even though this is highly emotional, not allowing a system that takes that emotion and converts it into something else to be done in this trial. And I think also strength is another thing, and it's also been tough, like not just the trial within itself and the witnesses that you're seeing come forward or speak, but also the jury selection was even a lot for the people in the city to go through that process and understanding that, which I feel like our team did a great job displaying that on our social media of how trial process even works. But yeah, it's similar. When I compare it to other cases that I've seen in the past that have to do with like law enforcement, like excessive force and things of that nature, like it seems like this team has done a great job in understanding like not only themselves but the system within itself and how to operate with that. Like poise has been key. And the young people, even though the adultification, like the fact that they wouldn't show the young people on TV for their testimony, but they were, you know, old enough to be present as witnesses. I just give kudos to them too, because the young lady that held her phone and kept the port, once again, poise, that just speaks volumes. It just speaks volumes. I think people they're very ready. We're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, personally for me, like the trial, I think what has been most like intense about it is that like it's so public, right? That it's everything is being recorded from jump, right? Like um we are getting to see, which is not usually like allowed, like no media is usually allowed to go through trials, but like it's open to the public. So like people can walk in themselves, right? And but given the pandemic, to make sure that everyone felt that they were like up to date or whatever the reasons were, they made this trial public. And so I think for me, just the amount of energy that has been around it, the different perspectives that I've heard, and again, tuning into the witnesses and listening to their very emotional and very raw, like, accounts of what they witnessed and what they saw. I think all of that has just been really playing to that energy of like, we're ready to like see justice really, be served, right? Um, but also like for me, when I like see all of this and I know the history of law enforcement here in the Twin Cities, in America, and given the last couple of years with like with Jamar Clark and Philando Castile, um, I think this trial happened really fast, right? Because it typically takes a really long time to go through the pleading stage of the trial and through the pre-trial stage, right? And I think because of so much publicity, a lot of that was really quickened, right? And then also given the circumstance of being in COVID, I just think everything was just happened really fast, right? And I think there's both positive and negative sides to that. Um, but yeah, those are just some things that I've been really thinking about. And also like kind of like the police perspectives that were brought up as witnesses were brought to the table or to the stand or whatever to like talk. And just kind of how the police chief, Arnando, I think that's his name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So kind of how like he is kind of crossing the blue line a little bit, right? Like going against his own quote unquote, right? And kind of, condemning Chauvin for the actions that he took. And that's not usually seen, right? Like they really are like, together on their rights and wrongs, right? Like we did this or we did not do this, right? And so to have the chief kind of, talk about that, for me, it's like they're like, yes, right. It seems like it's in good faith, but then also I question, right? Like, is this like a kind of a ploy to like kind of, because the department itself is scared of the like defund, disarm, disband movement that's been, going around. And so like, they're just like, um, kind of give the people what they want so that we can continue as business as usual, right? Um, and or like kind of salvaging like the narrative that like police is truly the last line of defense that we as civilians have, right? So we should understand that there are bad cops, right? But the system in and of itself is not bad, right? So for me, there's a lot of things that are just coming up as I'm like, going through this process and watching.
And I think, go ahead, Shanae.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will add, then we can probably skip to our last question because we're running a little bit out of time. But I will say that, and for the people who don't know, Chief Arredondo is our first police chief, right? And as an abolitionist organization, we say that we don't believe in the carceral system. Here in Minnesota, the local people here, there's a camp of people that have ultimate faith in this first Black chief, right, and want to support him in that role. And there are others that know that he represents a system, right, that is inherently evil, that inherently doesn't support us. And so there's quite the division about him as a person and then the system. I also wanted to add in terms of like the system of the courts, right, in this trial and how inhumane it is, right, and it's putting people's humanity on trial, right. There was oftentimes said like this is the George Floyd trial, and then people kind of corrected themselves and said, hey, George Floyd isn't on trial here. He didn't live to see his day in court. And just kind of recentering the conversation to be about Derek Chauvin. And Jen, I want to like leave you with an optimistic, right? Thing is like in all of the movements that you've ever known of, young people have always been at the center, right? So the fact that young people were there and they recorded, right? They resisted, is something to applaud, right? And that sometimes in urban areas or in that community specifically, there are people that say that it's not a community, it's crime ridden, those people don't care, and it was evident that those people do care, right, when they testified, right, and that they do believe in community, right, and they believe in looking out for one another. So I just wanted to leave it with that, and I also want to kind of prompt you all to the last question. I know that there are people in the audience that will be listening to this now, or that maybe will listen to this later. And oftentimes I get emails and it's like, how can we support the Twin Cities? How can we support the community? How can you support? How can they support us as individuals? So if you could like talk about how can people really get involved, engaged, get tuned in.
Yeah, there. I would definitely say that there are some mutual aid initiatives that are going around, both St. Paul and Minneapolis, and they're going towards either like supporting like direct action, direct support for homelessness, right? And then also like food drives for folks who are not able to get access to food. There's people, both like organizations and individuals that are mobilizing themselves and being part of that. And we, as well as financial drives as well, right? So not just food drives, they also have places where they just donate money to people that need it. And I think those are ways that folks that are outside of the Twin Cities can tap in, either, send monetary support or like, just like push out that message that mutual aid is happening within the Twin Cities and it is going towards direct support, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think to piggyback off that is to say that also allowing people space. And when I say people space, I mean Black folks. Like, this is not the time for the allies, you know what I mean, out there. This is not the time to expect them to educate you on the systems and how they oppress or how they are dealing. And we know this is a national thing. So this doesn't be something that directly is in the Twin Cities, but can directly affect just people all around in the space, is allowing that space and allowing them to process and deal with and go through this trial like we talked about. We have folks that are, living here that are not watching it at all because it's just too much for them. And then we have folks that are completely every day dedicated, spending their time and giving their time. So just asking that, you continue to allow those space that need it and people to express how they're dealing with this and feeling about this in the way in which they see fit, opposed to using it as a time or a catalyst to start a conversation that is a really hard conversation anytime, but especially right now, right? So that's another way I feel like you can help without having to give anything other than just space.
Yeah. That's a good point, Bryn and Edith. Both of you all made very good points. And I think the only thing I would add is really as you're learning, right, and as you are in your respective cities, to know that there's more than meets the eye, right, and that's just a simple way of saying like they don't tell you all the stories, right, and this is a complex story, right, a story of abolition, the potential for abolition, a story about racism and systems, right? And so they don't always show you that on the local news or even the national news. So it's important that you dig deep into the underground ways of learning. So resorting to the local and independent news outlets. Here in the Twin Cities, we have one called Unicorn Riot. They have great uh, news stories, right, and tons of information on George Floyd and the progression of the trial. Also, Georgia Fort, she's a local news person that like she's so dope and she's so like integrated into our community and trusted, right? That's another thing. You have to go to the source that's trusted by the people, right? And sometimes the national news outlets are not trusted by the people on the ground doing the work that's most impacted. And so those are just ways that people can get involved. People can also get involved with our work. Here in the Twin Cities, we are educating the young people, doing anti-racist youth organizing. And we're passionate about making sure that young people have the analysis, right? The things that they don't teach you in school, right? So that they can become critical thinkers about what is happening to them, for them, right? And around them without engaging them. So we make sure that we give them the education and engage them in all of the ways, right? So this is not just about giving education and saying go out organize. This is about like how can we support you, because life is still happening to you as you are most impacted by the systems. So sometimes it's showing up, sometimes it's education, sometimes it looks like fun and self-care. So we do all of those things, and we invite you to support us. Brent, can you tell the people how to support us, how to follow us?
Yeah, so follow us on all social media, YUIRTC on Instagram. On Facebook, it's Youth Undoing Institutional Racism. I believe Twin Cities, if I'm not wrong. But if you type that in, you should be able to find us. Same thing on Twitter. And our emails are also, our email is also tcyuir@gmail. So if you have any, like, if you want to send, some resources, or you want to just follow us and stay up to date on all the amazing things that we do here, please do that. Add us on all those pages.
Yeah. I think also just like to say that the city is planning to dismantle and take down George Floyd Square after the trial. And that's not something that the community wants. That's not something that is our doing, right? And so if y'all could, contact local officials and just like definitely just urge them that that space is something sacred. Something really important happened there. A lot of people gathered there from around the world, right? Not just Minnesota, not just America, but around the world. Folks were here last summer. Folks are still walking through that space, and it's it's a space where collective community can be practiced, right? And so I think that's really important, just for us, so that we know that that space can be something that we can learn from and go and get some sort of healing come through us, right? Yeah.
And one other thing that I know I don't want us to let go of neither is, right, it's not over after the trial, folks. Understand that, right? We have also the 1 year that's going to come up in May. So we understand that things, regardless of where the decision sways at, we also understand there's going to be work to do getting closer to this summer. So last year couldn't be anticipated, and a lot of people came in and were organizing and things like that, just on spot. But knowing that May is coming up and right around the corner, just stay in tune. Please don't check out after the trial, because we're still going to need you guys.
The fight for justice is continuing, right?
Yep.
And so I want to thank you all. My team is amazing. I'm a brag a little bit. My team is amazing, and we're doing some amazing work. Keep us lifted in the light, and make sure that you continue to engage, continue to lean in, because we need you. We need you. So thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
See y'all later.
See you later.
It's been great. Okay.